There comes a time in every soul's journey when silence becomes sacred. When you've cried until your spirit feels emptied, when your prayers seem unanswered and the walls of your room echo back your pain. That is not abandonment. That is the sacred stillness before divine redemption. What you see as loss, heaven calls preparation. What you feel as emptiness, heaven calls space. Space for what's coming. Space for what was always yours, but could not arrive while your hands were still holding broken things. Every tear you've shed has not fallen unnoticed. They were not wasted. They were counted, collected, and consecrated. For the soul that suffers in silence carries a fragrance only heaven can recognize. When you wept over betrayal, when you endured loneliness that clawed at your peace, when you stood in faith though everything within you trembled, you were not being punished, you were being purified. God has a strange way of blessing his children. He often breaks before he builds. He hides before he reveals. He wounds before he heals. And just when you think the story is over, he writes a chapter so radiant it redeems every tear that ever touched your face. You see, pain has a purpose. It prepares the soul for depths of joy it could never hold otherwise. Without the dark, the dawn would have no meaning. Without sorrow, gratitude would have no depth. The nights you thought would never end were shaping your endurance. The people who walked away were clearing your path. The silence you feared was teaching you to hear God's whisper more clearly. There is a divine exchange about to happen in your life. You will stand one day, not in regret, but in revelation, realizing that nothing was lost, only rearranged. The moments that broke you will become testimonies that bless others. The heartbreaks that crushed you will turn into wisdom that elevates you, and the tears that flowed in secret will become rivers of joy that cannot be hidden. God's blessings are never small. They do not simply return what was taken, they redeem it. When he restores, he multiplies. When he gives back, he glorifies. And when he blesses, it's not to erase the pain, but to prove that even pain was part of his plan. So if you are standing in the ruins of what used to be, do not despair. The ashes are not the end. They are the evidence that fire came, but you survived it. You may not yet see the beauty, but heaven has already written it into your story. The blessing coming your way is not just comfort, it's compensation. It will silence every doubt, heal every memory, and redeem every tear. The same God who watched you weep will now watch you rejoice. The same angels who saw you crawl through the darkness will now see you rise into light. And the same people who once questioned your worth will witness the hand of God turning your pain into proof of his faithfulness. So stand still, child of God. Dry your tears, for heaven is not silent. It's preparing. The storm did not destroy you. It only revealed your endurance. The waiting was not wasted. It was divine construction. And now, the blessing that is on its way will be so deep, so transformative, that it will redeem every tear you shed. There is a sacred truth often hidden beneath the noise of our pain. No tear ever shed in faith is forgotten. Every tear you have cried in the darkness, every sigh you released when words failed, has been seen, counted, and collected by the one who shaped you. You may think your sorrow evaporated into the air, but heaven caught it. You may believe your weeping was unnoticed, but heaven recorded it. For there is no pain too small to escape the attention of a loving God, and no tear too silent to reach his heart. Think about that night when you felt unseen, when your chest was tight, your soul weary, and your heart whispered, "Does anyone even care?" In that very moment, the Creator of the universe stood beside you. He saw the battle you fought between breaking down and holding on. He saw you choosing faith when fear was easier. He saw you praying, not because you felt strong, but because you had no other place to turn. That is where heaven moves, not in the noise of victory, but in the quiet surrender of tears. You see, tears are not signs of weakness. They are evidence of depth. Only those who love deeply, who hope sincerely, and who believe fiercely can weep in truth. When you cried over what you lost, when your heart broke because you gave your best and it still wasn't enough, those tears became sacred offerings. They carried your faith, your pain, and your longing directly to God's throne. Scripture says, He keeps our tears in a bottle. Imagine that, a divine remembrance of every moment you thought no one cared. Heaven remembers what earth ignores. Each tear tells a story. One speaks of betrayal, when you trusted someone and they shattered that trust. Another tells of disappointment, when your dreams were delayed, your prayers unanswered. Yet another carries grief, when you watch something precious fade away. But none of these tears were meaningless. In heaven's design, they were seeds. Every tear planted in sorrow will bloom in joy. Every ache offered to God becomes the foundation of your future strength. Sometimes you wondered why the pain lasted so long, why the tears wouldn't stop. You begged God to take them away, but He didn't. Not because He was deaf to your cries, but because He was working through them. You see, there are lessons only tears can teach. Compassion, humility, endurance, and faith without evidence. You learned how to pray without needing to see results. You discovered that brokenness can still worship, that silence can still speak, and that surrender is not defeat, but transformation. When you cried and no one came to comfort you, God was there, wrapping His presence around your fragile soul. He was not far away. He was inside the very ache that tore you apart. You didn't see Him because He was holding the pieces you couldn't hold yourself. Every time you whispered, "Why me?" He whispered back, "Because I'm shaping something in you that only pain can create." There will come a day, soon, when you will look back and realize that those nights of weeping were not wasted. They were building something eternal. The strength you have now, the empathy you carry, the wisdom you speak with, all of it was born from those tears. You don't just survive pain, you are sculpted by it. God uses your tears as tools to carve out a deeper soul, one that can love more purely and believe more fiercely. And when His timing unfolds, you'll see how every drop of sorrow became a drop of blessing. The same eyes that once cried in despair will shine with gratitude. The same heart that once broke will overflow with peace. You will realize that God never ignored your pain. He invested in it. He used it to prepare the soil for something beautiful, a blessing so profound it will make every tear worth it. So don't despise your tears, don't hide them in shame. Let them flow, knowing heaven is watching. Each one is a prayer in liquid form, a message too deep for words but perfectly understood by God. You may feel forgotten, but you are remembered in every ripple of your own sorrow. You may feel unseen, but heaven's eyes have never left you. There's coming a time when you'll stand before the very people who didn't understand your struggle, and they'll see the light in you that pain could not extinguish. They'll see the radiance that comes only from someone who walked through the fire and found God in the flames. You'll smile, not in pride, but in peace. Because you'll know the truth, no tear was wasted. Every drop of pain was a divine investment in the blessing that's about to overflow into your life. Your tears were never for nothing, they were holy. They were the ink with which God was writing your redemption story, and now the author is turning the page. There are moments in life when the silence of heaven feels unbearable. You pray, you wait, and yet nothing seems to move. The doors remain closed, the opportunities disappear, and the answers you seek hide behind clouds of uncertainty. You begin to wonder if God has forgotten you, if your faith has somehow failed, or if your prayers were not good enough to reach His ears. But what you must understand is this: divine delays are never denials. They are preparations. When God makes you wait, it is not to punish you. It is to prepare you for something greater than what you ask for. Think of it like this: a seed must remain buried in the soil before it can grow. To the seed, that darkness feels like death, motionless, silent, and hidden. But beneath that quiet soil, transformation is taking place. Roots are forming, strength is building, and life is awakening in unseen ways. The delay is not destruction, it is construction. The same is true for you. While you wait, heaven is working behind the curtain, aligning what your eyes cannot yet see. The blessing you prayed for requires the right time, the right place, and the right version of you. Sometimes God delays not because the promise is unready, but because you are not yet ready to hold it. He knows that premature blessings can become burdens. What He gives before you are prepared to receive can destroy the very thing it was meant to build. So, in His mercy, He slows the process. He stretches your patience. He deepens your faith. He refines your heart until it can carry the weight of what He is about to deliver. That's why your waiting season feels like pressure. Waiting is not idle. It is the gymnasium of the soul. It strengthens your endurance, disciplines your emotions, and purifies your intentions. When you pray for something great, God does not only prepare the blessing, He prepares you to handle it, because His goal is not just to give, but to sustain. And what is sustained by faith cannot be shaken by circumstance. Many times, the blessing you're waiting for is being built piece by piece. The connections, the timing, the opportunities, all are being divinely woven together. You may not see movement, but there is orchestration. You may not hear progress, but there is divine conversation happening about you in heaven's council. The angels are arranging the next scene of your story, and when it's ready, God will pull back the curtain. You will then understand why He said not yet when you wanted right now. You'll see how the delay protected you from people not meant for your destiny, from doors that looked good but led to dead ends, from shortcuts that would have stolen your long-term peace. You'll realize the blessing was not denied. It was simply preserved until your spirit could sustain its glory. Think of Joseph, sitting in a prison cell for years after being falsely accused. To him it may have looked like abandonment, but it was divine positioning. Had he been released earlier, he would have returned to ordinary life. But when the right time came, his delay became the bridge to destiny. The same God who orchestrated Joseph's release from prison at the perfect moment is orchestrating your release from waiting. When you finally walk into what you've been praying for, you will see that every delay was love disguised as silence. You'll see how waiting stripped you of arrogance, taught you humility, and deepened your dependence on God. You'll see that your character grew stronger than your circumstances, and when the blessing comes, it won't just fill your life, it will overflow. Because God never repays you equally for your patience. He multiplies. He turns waiting into overflowing reward. So, if it feels like heaven has been quiet, don't mistake stillness for absence. The silence of God is often the sound of preparation. You are being positioned, not punished. The longer the delay, the greater the unveiling. For when God finally moves, He moves in a way that makes you forget how long you waited. The season of delay is the classroom of faith, and graduation day is near. The blessing that seemed late will arrive right on time, not a minute early, not a moment too soon. You'll look back and say, "Now I see why it took so long." You'll realize God wasn't withholding, He was perfecting. And when it happens, you'll understand this truth. Divine delays are not divine rejections. They are divine preparations for a blessing so abundant it will overflow into every corner of your life. The wait was never empty, it was holy. And soon, the promise you prayed for will meet the person you've become. Pain is the language through which heaven speaks when words no longer suffice. It is the tool God uses to refine what comfort cannot reach. We often think of pain as punishment, something to escape, something to silence, something that proves we've fallen out of favor. But in truth, pain is not evidence of God's absence. It is often the mark of His hand at work. The fire does not burn to destroy, it burns to purify. Every ache, every loss, every heartbreak is an invitation to transformation. If life were free of pain, we would never grow beyond the surface. We would mistake ease for blessing and comfort for purpose. But God, in His divine wisdom, allows the heart to break so that it can expand. He allows wounds not to weaken us, but to deepen us, to carve space within our souls for a greater measure of His presence. The gold of your destiny cannot shine unless it passes through the furnace of affliction. When you look back, you'll realize that the moments that shaped you the most were not the easy ones. Growth never comes wrapped in comfort, it comes clothed in challenge. Pain forces you to look inward, to confront who you are when there is nothing left to hold on to. It strips away pride, illusion, and dependence on what is temporary. You begin to see that strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to find meaning within it. Consider the process of refining silver. The silversmith holds the metal over intense flame, never taking his eyes off it, because he knows that 1 second too long could destroy it. The heat removes impurities, separating what is precious from what is perishable. Only when he sees his reflection in the metal does he know it's pure. That is exactly how God handles your soul. He does not leave you in the fire unattended. He watches over you, ensuring the heat only burns away what does not belong. And when He sees His reflection in you, when your heart mirrors His, He knows the process has fulfilled its purpose. There is something sacred in the breaking. When your heart shatters, light finds room to enter. Pain opens your eyes to truths you couldn't see before. Who truly stands beside you, what truly matters, and who you are beneath the masks the world made you wear. It awakens your empathy. You begin to feel for others in ways you never did before, because pain teaches what ease cannot. Compassion. You start recognizing suffering not as a curse, but as a bridge connecting you to humanity and to God. Compassion. You start recognizing suffering not as a curse, but as a bridge connecting you to humanity and to God. And though pain may seem endless, it never comes without a divine reason. It may take months or years, but when the purpose unfolds, you'll see that what tried to break you was the very thing that built you. The betrayal taught you boundaries. The loss taught you gratitude. The heartbreak taught you strength. The waiting taught you trust. Each wound carried wisdom disguised as sorrow. There are seasons when God must let you walk through fire, because only fire can reveal your faith. He will not always remove the storm. Sometimes He will strengthen you to walk through it. That's when your faith ceases to be theory and becomes testimony. You begin to understand that what you thought was punishment was actually purification. What you called delay was preparation. What you labeled as rejection was redirection towards something higher. The pain you feel now is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a deeper one. It's the sacred threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. And when the healing comes, because it will come, you won't just thank God for removing the pain, you'll thank Him for using it. You'll realize the fire didn't consume you, it revealed you. It burned away what was false and refined what was eternal. One day you'll stand on the other side of this valley and say, "Now I understand." You'll see that every sleepless night, every tear, every ache carried purpose. Without that pain, you wouldn't have found your purity. Without that breaking, you wouldn't have met your purpose. So don't despise the struggle. It's not here to destroy you. It's here to deliver you into the version of yourself that your destiny requires. Pain is not your enemy. It's your awakening. And though the process may hurt, the product will be holy. You will emerge not wounded but transformed, not broken but rebuilt, not bitter but purified, ready to carry the purpose that was being forged through your suffering. Your pain is not wasted, it's sacred. It's the passageway through which heaven purifies the soul and births divine purpose. When God restores, He does not return things to how they were. He makes them better than they have ever been. His restoration is not a rewind, it is a rebirth. What you lost may have been precious, but what is coming will carry divine increase. You see, man replaces, but God multiplies. Human restoration mends what's broken. Divine restoration creates something entirely new. And when God's hand moves, you realize that nothing you went through was wasted. Every tear, every loss, every heartbreak was building interest for a future blessing that far outweighs the pain. There is a beauty in divine mathematics. God never gives back what was taken. He multiplies it. He uses subtraction to prepare for multiplication. When people walk away, when opportunities vanish, when dreams collapse, it feels like life is shrinking. But in heaven's economy, loss is not decrease. It is divine investment. What leaves your hands never leaves God's plan. The pain you suffered becomes the seed that will birth your next harvest. Look at the story of Job. He lost everything. His wealth, his health, his children, his reputation. Yet, when the season of restoration came, the same God who allowed the storm spoke abundance into existence. Job received double for every single thing he lost. His tears watered the soil for blessings that could only grow after loss. That is how God restores, not equally, but exceedingly. The restoration of God is not justice, it is generosity. He doesn't just balance the scales, He tips them in your favor. When God begins to restore, He starts with your heart before your circumstances. He rebuilds your faith, renews your strength, and reawakens your vision, because if He restored the external without healing the internal, the same wounds would reopen. So He takes His time. He rebuilds you piece by piece, layer by layer, until your spirit is strong enough to sustain what He's about to multiply. That is why restoration sometimes takes longer than destruction, because creation always requires care. It's in those silent seasons when you think everything is over that God is doing His most intricate work. He takes the ruins of your past and turns them into the foundation of your future. He gathers the fragments of your broken life and fashions them into something so radiant that those who saw you fall will marvel at how you rose. When God restores, He ensures your testimony cannot be denied. He restores in such a way that even your enemies must admit, the hand of God is upon them. Sometimes you will realize that what He returns is not the same thing you lost. And that's because He's not in the business of recycling pain. He gives you new things, new people, new purpose, blessings that carry no sorrow. The relationships you lost will be replaced by peace. The doors that closed will be replaced by gateways of favor. The seasons that broke you will be replaced by chapters that bless you beyond comprehension. You may have thought what you lost was the end, but it was only the pruning before growth. Like a tree trimmed down to its roots, you were being prepared to bloom again. And this time, your fruit will be greater, your reach wider, your roots deeper. For in God's plan, every loss is a lesson, every setback a set-up, every wound an opening for grace. When He restores, it's not just about you. It's about everyone connected to you. Your testimony becomes their hope. Your comeback becomes their confirmation that God still moves in power. The same mouth that cursed you will bless you. The same eyes that pitied you will witness your elevation. The same ground where you fell will become the ground where you flourish. Do not fear what was taken. It was never yours to lose. It was God's to transform. He allowed what was temporary to fall away, so that what is eternal could take root. When He restores, He multiplies not only what you had, but who you are. You will emerge wiser, stronger, and more radiant than before. So hold your peace when things seem to crumble. The ruins are not the end. They're the materials for your next chapter. God is not merely rebuilding your life. He's rewriting it with multiplication in His hand. The day will come when you will look at your blessings and realize that the math of heaven has no logic. It only has love. What you lost was painful, but what you're about to receive will redeem every moment of that pain 100-fold. God's restoration doesn't just restore your portion, it multiplies your destiny. There is a moment in every believer's life when private pain meets public purpose, when what you endured in silence becomes the very reason God elevates you in the open. You may have cried behind closed doors, carried invisible battles, and walked through storms that no one else saw. People only witnessed the calm face you wore, not the broken spirit behind it. They saw your patience, but not your pain, your endurance, but not your exhaustion. But the God who saw it all, every hidden tear, every unspoken ache, is now preparing to reward you openly. God never forgets what was endured in faith. He is the witness to your silent suffering, and heaven is never deaf to a righteous cry. The same places where you were mocked will become the places where you are honored. The same mouths that gossiped about your downfall will one day speak of your favor. For when God decides that a season of sorrow has fulfilled its purpose, He doesn't just end it. He transforms it into evidence of His faithfulness. You see, sorrow was not your permanent condition. It was your spiritual preparation. While you mourned, heaven was molding. While you waited, heaven was weaving. Your heartbreak wasn't the end of your story. It was the shaping of your destiny. God allowed you to walk through pain not because He took pleasure in your tears, but because He knew those tears were washing your heart clean for something greater. The suffering purified your motives, sharpened your discernment, and deepened your compassion. What once broke you has now built you. Think of Joseph, sold by his brothers, forgotten in prison, falsely accused. His sorrow stretched over years of isolation. But when the appointed time arrived, God lifted him from the dungeon to the palace in a single day. That's how divine promotion works. It doesn't take a lifetime. It takes a moment of divine timing. The world saw Joseph's suffering as misfortune, but heaven saw it as a hidden internship. When the reward came, it wasn't just private vindication, it was public recognition. The same brothers who betrayed him bowed before him, and Joseph could finally say, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." You, too, are on the brink of that kind of shift. The sorrow that seemed endless is reaching its expiration date. You are about to step into a season where what was done to you will be used for you. Every injustice, every betrayal, every disappointment will now serve as evidence of how divinely protected and chosen you were all along. What once embarrassed you will now empower you. What once made you cry will soon make you testify. There's something sacred about how God rewards his faithful ones. He does not do it quietly. He blesses you in the same arena where you were once humiliated, in front of those who underestimate your worth. That is why you must never despise your low moments. They are the foundation upon which your elevation will stand. The people who once pitied you will witness what it means when God decides to repay a faithful heart. And this reward that is coming is not just material, it is spiritual. Peace that cannot be shaken, joy that cannot be stolen, confidence that cannot be destroyed. These are the first fruits of your divine compensation. Then, as God unfolds the visible blessings, the opportunities, the relationships, the breakthroughs, you will recognize a divine pattern. Your sorrow was the seed, and this new season is the harvest. The beauty of divine justice is that God doesn't just settle the score, he writes a new one. He doesn't only end the sorrow, he uses it as the very soil from which your joy will bloom. And when he promotes you, it won't be in secret. He will make sure that those who witness your tears also witness your triumph, not to shame them, but to glorify himself through your life. So, lift your head. You are not forgotten, you are positioned. The darkness that surrounded you was never meant to bury you. It was meant to conceal you until your unveiling, and that unveiling is near. The season of sorrow is folding into the season of reward. The same God who watched you endure is now orchestrating your elevation. You will stand in the light, carrying the lessons your pain taught you, and people will wonder how you survived. But you'll know it was grace, it was timing, and it was God. You'll realize that your tears were never wasted. They were investments, and now heaven's return is due. Your reward is coming. Not quietly, but publicly. For the one who saw your sorrow is now ready to showcase his glory through your story. There is a kind of faith that only shines when everything else is dark. It's not the faith that celebrates miracles already seen or praises blessings already received. It's the faith that holds steady when every sign says give up. It's the faith that whispers God is still good, even when the evidence seems to vanish. That kind of faith cannot be learned in comfort. It's forged in the shadows, when you have no map, no assurance, and no applause, only trust. We often want to see before we believe. We want signs, confirmations, and visible progress. But the greatest faith is not built through proof. It is built through silence. When heaven seems quiet, that's when your faith graduates from theory to truth. It's easy to believe when prayers are answered quickly, when doors open easily, when favor flows without resistance. But real faith is tested when you knock and there's no reply, when you sow and there's no harvest yet, when you pray and the sky feels sealed. In those moments, God is not being cruel. He's training your soul to walk by belief, not by sight. Faith in the dark is the spiritual muscle that lifts you when sight fails. Every unanswered prayer strengthens that muscle. Every delay stretches it. Every disappointment trains it to hold. It's the same way gold is purified in the furnace. It's not destroyed by heat, it's refined by it. The longer it stays in the fire, the purer it becomes. And so it is with faith. The longer it endures darkness, the more unshakable it becomes. When life feels uncertain and you can't see what's next, remember this. Light doesn't test faith. Darkness does. You cannot prove your trust in daylight, when everything makes sense. But in darkness, when logic fades and emotion wavers, your heart's true loyalty is revealed. That's when you discover whether your faith was built on comfort or conviction, and when you choose to believe without seeing, you step into the realm where miracles are born. Consider Abraham, who waited decades for a promise that seemed impossible. His faith was not built while holding his child. It was built while staring at empty arms. Or think of Noah building an ark under clear skies while others laughed. Faith in the dark will always look foolish to those living by sight. Yet those who endure the darkness become the ones who later lead others into light. The purpose of dark seasons is not punishment, it is strengthening. God hides you in the dark to protect your seed while it grows. A seed doesn't develop in the sunlight, it germinates underground, in hiddenness. The soil looks like burial, but it's actually birth. Likewise, your season of not seeing is not the end of your story. It's the quiet part, where your roots grow strong enough to sustain the future harvest. When you walk through those unseen paths, and fear tells you to stop, faith becomes your vision. You begin to see with the eyes of the Spirit instead of the eyes of flesh. You start to recognize that even when you can't trace God's hand, you can still trust His heart. You begin to rest in the assurance that what looks delayed is only being designed with precision. And one day, when the light finally returns, you'll realize something beautiful. You are not the same person who entered the dark. The fear that once controlled you will have lost its voice. The doubts that once shook you will have no authority. You will emerge not just grateful for the light, but strong enough to sustain it. Because faith built in the dark doesn't fade in brightness. It becomes the foundation that keeps you humble, grounded and grateful. The truth is, faith built in darkness creates endurance that no success can corrupt. It gives you peace when others panic, calm when others crumble, and hope when others hide. You've learned that your security was never in circumstances, but in God's consistency. You've learned that even when everything changes, His promises remain the same. So if you find yourself surrounded by silence right now, don't despair. This is not the absence of God. It is the workshop of faith. This is where He teaches you to depend on Him completely. The darkness is not there to destroy you, but to strengthen your inner sight. Soon, when the light comes again, and it will, you'll realize that your faith was never blind. It was being trained to see beyond the visible. The light that's coming is brighter because of the darkness you endured, and when it arrives, you won't just thank God for the blessing, you'll thank Him for the dark that taught you how to hold it. There will come a day when you will stand in awe of what God has done and realize that every tear you ever cried was not for nothing. Every sleepless night, every broken hope, every silent prayer will finally make sense. You will see how God took what was meant to destroy you and transformed it into the foundation of your destiny. His blessing will not simply comfort you, it will redeem you. It will reach back into the pain of your past and rewrite the meaning of it all. You will understand that every wound carried a purpose, every tear watered the soil of your miracle, and every heartbreak was carving out space for the blessing that is now on its way. You see, when God blesses, He doesn't do it partially. His blessing is not a surface repair, it's a total restoration that reaches the depths of your being. He heals what people couldn't see, repairs what you thought was beyond fixing, and restores the years that pain stole. The blessing He's preparing will not just touch your circumstances, it will touch your soul. It will bring peace where there was torment, laughter where there was mourning, and light where there was endless shadow. When it comes, it won't just make you forget the tears, it will give those tears meaning. Every moment of anguish was a seed planted in faith. God never wastes pain. He converts suffering into strength, confusion into clarity, loss into legacy. You cried because you didn't understand why things were taken from you, why people you trusted turned away, why your prayers seemed unanswered, but now you will see. It was all divine choreography. The delays, the betrayals, the endings, they weren't chaos, they were construction. God was building something eternal in you, something no human hand could produce. When He blesses you, it won't be in secret. It will be so evident that even those who doubted your worth will have to acknowledge the hand of God upon your life. The very people who questioned your faith will see the fruit of your endurance. The same places that once witnessed your pain will echo with your laughter. That is the magnitude of divine redemption. It doesn't hide in silence. It speaks loudly of God's justice and mercy. And this blessing that's coming, it won't just meet your needs, it will overflow. It will not only restore what was lost, but surpass it. You'll understand why the wait was so long, because heaven was crafting something that could not be rushed. The depth of your pain required the depth of His preparation. You weren't waiting for an ordinary blessing. You were waiting for one that could redeem every tear. This blessing will reach into the most wounded parts of your past and heal them so completely that you'll be able to speak of your pain without trembling. You'll remember what happened, but it won't hurt anymore. You'll revisit the memories that once broke you and find gratitude instead of grief. Because when God redeems, He doesn't erase the story. He changes the ending. There's a divine principle that every faithful soul must learn. The deeper the pain, the greater the redemption. The depth of your suffering determines the magnitude of your blessing. God's justice demands balance, and when you've suffered long and remained faithful, the scale of heaven tilts in your favor. The blessing that's coming will not simply satisfy you, it will vindicate you. It will make your enemies silent, your critics confused, and your heart at peace. One day soon, you will wake up and feel the shift. The weight that once pressed on your chest will lift. The silence that once haunted you will turn into peace. The same tears that blurred your vision will now water your joy. You'll walk with a calm that others can't explain because they won't know the price you paid in faith. You'll smile, not because life is perfect, but because grace finally found you in its fullness. When God blesses you this deeply, it won't be about status or recognition. It will be about redemption. It will redeem your faith, your waiting, your heartbreak, your pain, and as you look back, you'll whisper with gratitude, "Now I see why it had to happen this way." Your story will become proof that God never abandons His children, even when He's silent. You'll realize He was not ignoring your tears. He was collecting them, preparing to return them as rivers of joy. And when He does, you'll stand radiant, knowing this truth in your soul. The blessing that comes from God is so deep, so divine, that it redeems every tear you ever shed. There comes a time when heaven answers not with words, but with wonders. You've walked through the valley of tears, carrying questions no one could answer, fighting battles no one could see, and holding on to faith when everything within you wanted to let go. But this is the turning point. The long night is almost over. The dawn that God promised is breaking, and when it rises, it will not just bring light, it will bring redemption. Everything you've endured was not a punishment. It was a preparation. The pain you felt, the silence you endured, the losses you grieved, they were the chisels in the hand of a master artist, shaping a masterpiece called you. Every hidden season refined your heart. Every unanswered prayer built your endurance, and every tear became a testimony waiting to bloom. Now heaven is shifting the seasons. You are stepping into a chapter that will make sense of everyone that came before. When God blesses you, it won't be to erase your past, it will be to crown it. The very things that once made you weep will become the backdrop of His glory. You'll look around and realize you are standing in the very place you once begged to escape. But now, it's different. The ashes have turned to beauty, the wounds have become wisdom, and the sorrow has been transformed into strength. That's what divine redemption looks like. It doesn't just restore what was lost, it redefines what was possible. So stand firm. Do not lose hope because of how long it's taken. What God is preparing is not ordinary, it's eternal, and when it comes, it will come in such abundance that it will feel as though heaven itself has opened its gates in your honor. The blessings will flow not as payment but as proof that God saw every tear, heard every prayer, and kept every promise. You will no longer walk with the heaviness of yesterday, but with the quiet power of someone who knows that God truly redeems all things. You will see with your own eyes what it means when Scripture says, He gives beauty for ashes and joy for mourning. The same hands that held you in sorrow will now lift you into glory. The same God who collected your tears will now fill your life with laughter. And when you stand in that moment of divine fulfillment, when peace replaces pain, when joy replaces mourning, you'll understand why the journey had to be so hard, why the wait had to be so long, and why the tears had to fall, because the depth of your pain was preparing the depth of your blessing. This is the hour of redemption. This is the chapter where heaven rewrites your story. Every tear was a seed, and now the harvest is ready. Lift your head, dry your eyes, for the God who watched you weep is about to make you rejoice in front of the very world that saw you broken. The pain is over. The waiting has ended. The blessing has begun. And it will be so deep, so divine that it will redeem every tear you have ever shed.